Hi everyone, it's Jake, Nadia. This is our buddy boy, Sidoni girl, and our Babu Miracle is downstairs. And today we'll be discussing Talk to Me.
The new horror film, A24 horror film that is taking over theaters. Seems like it's kind of hit the zeitgeist and people are really excited about it. It's directed by YouTubers, Philippou brothers, I think. They're Australian and their channel is called Raka Raka. So this is kind of really awesome to see that they're finding success. What did you think of this film?
So I will just start out with saying that A24 has done it again.
Well, they didn't produce. I mean, they just picked it up.
Well, they picked it up.
Yeah.
Like they know what they're doing when it comes to, I think, like what audience.
Finding movies.
Yeah, like I can always trust that brand. I feel like when it comes to films lately.
Right.
It was horrible.
Wait.
No. Hold on. Let me clarify. Not horrible as in the film, but horrible as in the experience. And you might think it's correlated, but it isn't when it comes to horror films, because I guess you expect a horrible experience and you want to be rewarded for it. It's a very abusive relationship. So it's a very
nasty kind of mean-spirited, sort of mean-spirited movie. It's not like a Scream movie. It's not like, heroes, good, it's not a Stephen King story. It's more of just like a bleak, and I can think of like maybe Evil Dead, like a comparison, like the original Evil Dead.
It was very much you can compare it to Evil Dead in many ways. I guess minor ways, actually. I would rate the movie, 8 out of 10. Great story. It really does a great job at not putting a typical story and not making it so typical. And by that, I mean, it has like real emotions. You are able to actually see why the protagonist, who usually turns into antagonist in a lot of movies such as this one, they're making the choices that they are, and they're not just being led astray because they're being stupid, and like the stupidity, yes, it's there, but it has a reason why it's there, and we all as humans can make like dumb decisions when we're in distress. So this really exemplifies that, and you're able to make amends with like all of the choices that the characters are making. I thought the directing was really well done. One of the big things about this film is that kids are going to be kids. I think you could see that from the trailer, but it gives a reason to why kids are being this way. Yes, they're acting out of boredom in a lot of sense, but they're getting high, and you can tell that from the trailer. So there's a reason for why kids are being dumb. They want to get high and they want to just live it up as teens do, except, instead of doing drugs, their drug is spirits.
Right. I mean, it is taking a very like basic horror movie concept but it's done extremely well. I feel like, the story is a bit like of a formula, it's a possession story with like a cursed object, that people get obsessed with, I feel like that was sort of typical, but the execution was just fantastic. And I think what really made it work so well for me was the specificity. It really felt like this was made by young filmmakers who had an understanding with the tech. I mean, a lot of movies these days that are great are sort of set in the past. A lot of filmmakers doing throwbacks, but this really captured like the energy of being a young person now with social media, with the implications of that. Really,
also there's like a good amount of foresight in the film as well. Like you're able to, if you look at the beginning of the film and you look at the ending, there's a clear correlation and message there about when someone's grieving or, just pain, and generally how we tend to go about it, and human nature when it comes to that as well.
Right. I think that there is the Australianness of it. I'm really glad they did do it in Australia, and it has this kind of texture. And I think the best part of the movie are the characters and their relationships. It feels so authentic. Mm-hmm. So much of it was just like, wow, this feels really like real. It doesn't feel like a Hollywood version of kids. It felt like these are teenagers and they're in a lot of trouble, and that gave it really higher stakes, because it felt like they were very vulnerable. And there's some really disturbing scenes in this movie. Yeah, it's something that I couldn't really get out of my head after watching it.
And what would you rate it?
I'd give it like a 7 or 8 out of 10, I think.
Very similar to mine.
Probably my second favorite horror movie of the year after probably Evil Dead Rise. I really like Evil Dead Rise.
This is my first one. This is my first favorite.
I think maybe because like Evil Dead Rise didn't really have, because I kind of get annoyed sometimes with the trauma narrative for horror movies, and this was kind of doing the, dead mother kind of situation. There's some kind of trauma backstory, and it fits with the story, and it works extremely well. But what I liked about Evil Dead Rise was a bit of the just like insane, over the top kind of thing, and the kind of comedy. I always like that. This movie is not. There's a couple laughs, I would say, but it's really not a funny movie. It's a pretty dark movie.
And I definitely have criticism of the film, which we can get into in the spoiler section because it would spoil the narrative. But I thought it was really well done. I like the biggest thing, and it seems like a low bar, but it's also missing in so many horror films, is that people just tend to do things because they're dumb, or there's this narrative when it comes to kid horror films that they're just being kids, they're dumb. And kids are not just being dumb for no reason. There's something that comes, there's a lack of understanding usually with emotions that they have. They're trying to fulfill that. They're trying to kind of explain that, or at least exercise that frustration in some way. And it might seem stupid to adults, but it's not dumb when they're doing it at the moment. Or if it is dumb, then there's a reason for that. Is there anything that you want to talk about in non-spoiler section before we get into the spoilers?
Not really. I'd just say both highly recommend.
Yeah.
It's really a worthwhile watch.
Yeah.
Genuinely scary.
Genuinely.
And clearly like a sign of these new talents in movies.
I wouldn't say it's as scary as Evil Dead, since you mentioned it. But Evil Dead Rise, but it's definitely, I would say, second scary, but
really? I thought this was scarier. I thought Evil Dead Rise was... Well, Evil Dead Rise is a little more campy.
I was choking because of the group stuff. I was gross. Literally, it was so gross that I was literally choking. This is not gross. Sometimes it's grotesque,
I guess,
but it's not gross.
Gross out horror doesn't really affect me as much as just like kids getting injured and in trouble. Well, I guess that's an Evil Dead Rise too, but
yeah,
I don't know.
So I guess different strokes for different folks.
Yeah,
is what it comes to when it.
This one was heavier with the themes, much heavier.
Very much more realistic too.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Okay, spoiler. 3, 2, 1. Okay, Mia. Who's the best friend. Yes, she's the best friend, who starts off as a protagonist, ends up being the antagonist because she's the one who becomes possessed. And the reason what she becomes possessed is because she, I think there's a 90-second rule, and basically the spirit that she gets possessed by, it ends up staying longer. Like they try to take the hand off of her and blow the candle away, but the spirit doesn't let it. There's a clear... and this is really great for continuity, because there's a great connection with the spirit that we see in the beginning that Mia gets possessed by, and at the end, the spirit that pretends to be her mother, which we don't know in the middle of the film that it pretends to be the mother, but at the end we can clearly see there's a great correlation to that, because the spirit in the beginning, you can see that she drowned, and at the end there's still like the drowning kind of swampy kind of look to the mother. Also Mia's mother.
Wait, are you saying the mother drowned? What?
No, the person pretending, like imitating to be the mother.
Right.
I think it's the same spirit. That's what I'm thinking.
Right.
And then Mia's mom, she committed suicide, but the spirit imitating her mom says, no, I didn't, or whatever. And this is one of the examples of what we were talking about earlier, where it shows like a reason to believe and why like Mia is making the choices that she is, because her father says there's a suicide note or whatever, but the spirit is clearly saying no. And her father doesn't like actually give her closure. So there's an innate need for her to get a closure to why her mom died. Not knowing if it was a suicide, not knowing if it was accidental, because her father is conceiving this truth from her. And then really the spirit saying, I didn't die. I didn't mean to do that. She obviously has this need, her mom. I don't want you to believe that you left me. I want to believe that it was an accident. Like a lot of people, I'm sure in the same situation, there's that need to believe that they weren't in so much pain that they had to do that to themselves. And so the spirit kind of gives her that comfort, and therefore there is that, not to mention that she's hallucinating the entire time, so she has a hard time distinguishing what's real and what's not. But as a result of that grief, trauma, and really the lack of closure that she has with her mom's death, what happens is that her best friend's brother Riley ends up being the victim. Riley looks up to Mia, and they're more like brother-sister relationship, because Mia has like Mia finds a second family basically with Riley, and they're more like sisters rather than best friends. And then so in doing so, in having that kind of relationship, Riley ends up being possessed. And there's again the 90-second rule, and because Mia is in pain, the spirit can read her mind and therefore like pretends to be her mom and saying, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to leave you or whatever. So she stops the ritual from being less than 90 seconds, and therefore the spirit is able to possess Riley's body and really just, hurt it. Thankfully, his sister comes at last minute and is able to like stop the final blow. Criticisms that I have of the film, which leads to the ending, is that because Mia is in a hallucinating state, she's like, having anxiety. She has a lot of like different thought process. She has stream of consciousness, like all rolling all over her. And one thing is that she asks her best friend is obviously mad at her because she clearly didn't want her brother to be part of this ritual possession kind of a scenario, but Mia allows it. And so she's mad at her. And what Mia does is Mia asks her best friend's boyfriend to sleep with her, which is clearly like she's being a bad friend. So this is kind of like, this is a typical criticism that I have, because when you see the perceived protagonist become an antagonist, then you kind of find like reasons to why it's justified. And I feel like her being a bad friend to her best friend is like a reason why it's justified that like she should be the villain. But I think like the possession and her hallucination and her grief and choices and why she is taking the route that she is was justified enough that she didn't need to be a bad friend on top of that for us as the audience to see why she's going down that path, and why her friends don't like her. I think what it does though is it puts more sympathy to Jade and less sympathy to Mia at the end when Mia ultimately dies and becomes a spirit herself. It's more of a tragedy. Yeah. And then, but I thought it was a really funny scene when Jade's boyfriend wakes up and then like Mia thinks that it's a spirit like sucking on the boyfriend's toe, but then it's really like Mia, and then the boyfriend goes, "What the fuck?" and then just wakes up to like her sucking the toe.
Oh yeah.
It's really funny.
It was funny. There were some just like shocking moments. I mean, in particular, like all of the possession scenes were really good, and I like how the movie kind of parallels. And I listened to an interview with the directors on, I think, the Big Picture podcast, and they talked about how this story was partly inspired by a neighbor friend or something who was having a bad reaction to drugs. People were filming him while he was doing it, and that I think is a really interesting parallel, and at a lot of times the mom of Jade is like, what drugs did you give him? And it's clearly like a parallel that this hand thing, this ceramic hand, is basically a parallel for drug use and kind of becoming obsessed with something, common for people who are experiencing tons of grief to fall into that trap. So kind of an anti-drug PSA, interestingly.
That's another point that I wanted to make earlier is that, again, like the choices clearly correlated. We obviously talked about what happens with Mia and why her choices are justified, but also other kids, like they're getting high off of this. And so it's not like they're just doing it to be stupid. There's a scene where they're all laughing, all they're hanging out and stuff because like one of the ghosts is singing and doing different stuff. So there is like a clear entertainment factor for it, which is justified because it's like, oh, okay, as long as you don't go over 90 seconds, it's going to be fine. They haven't seen any death. And you can see clearly when Riley gets hurt that they stop it, everyone except for Mia,
And Mia's the reason why he did, because she sees her mom. And
exactly.
Thinks she sees her mom,
Yeah.
So I personally had underwhelming feelings about the ending. I thought that it kind of left on more of a down note and not a big scary note. I wish that the stakes got elevated a little more. After she stabs her dad in the neck, it's kind of like, yeah, she's going to try to kill Riley.
But then she snaps out at the last minute and she, throws herself into the traffic. So.
Yeah. And I really loved the last shot where you get to see like, oh, she's there too, with them now doing the talk to me from the other side. So that was really interesting. And I thought that ended the movie well, but I kind of wish that there was more. I don't know, when they teased that kind of like orgy of evil demons, you know, I was like, ooh, are we going to go to that world? And like, is it going to come out? Is it going to be, you know, I was kind of hoping like, oh, are we going to get really big and crazy here? But no, and that's fine too, you know, but I was also kind of like, there were scarier moments earlier in the movie, and the ending didn't really have the scariest parts, I thought.
It was interesting how Riley, when Mia died, recovered. And, you know, there is that another again, choices and why it was happening the way it was. I think like Mia was driven to kill Riley because the one guy whose brother was possessed earlier in the film said that throughout time, the possession kind of gets weaker and the person recovers.
Yeah.
So Riley was going to come out of like hell or purgatory, wherever he was, regardless.
Yeah.
But I think the spirit was trying to like, if a person is killed with another spirit inside of them, then they're going to be trapped in the purgatory themselves forever. Yeah. Hence Mia. So I think the spirit was driving Mia to kill Riley, because if she killed him while the old man spirit was still in him, then he would have been trapped. But with time, the old man's possession would have grown weaker and weaker and eventually freed up Riley for him to be himself. Mm. I didn't really know if that scene was 100% real, though, I will tell you, because Riley seemed very recovered and he was pretty banged up. So I don't know how you can fully recover from all the trauma that spirit put himself to. And then also it seemed like her dad was recovered and obviously leaving the hospital alone without her. And that's a tragedy in itself, because he lost his wife. He didn't tell his daughter like the full disclosure into events that happened that, you know, in correlation to Mia's mom's death. And then he lost his daughter as well. But, you know, I smell a sequel. You know, and also another thing that I didn't understand. Another thing I didn't understand is the hand when Mia is in the spirit world and then she's the person that they're talking to. I didn't understand if the hand was recovered from Mia's bedroom and someone else kind of got it, or if there's like multiple of those hands that they're like, you know, because they said that it could be a satanic hand. So there's a lot of questions that are unanswered. And if you have any theories to any of them, please let us know.
That's the least interesting stuff to me.
I like it. I think it's interesting.
I don't need to know more about the
do. Comment
better to let it just be a mystery.
No, comment it. I want to know everything.
All right. Well,
let us know what you thought, and we'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.